All right, tēnā koutou I te whānau, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou, ko Yasmine tōku ingoa, and I am so excited to be facilitating this Wāhanga Whā. So before we get on started, I'm going to be joined today by Rangimokai and Paraone, and let's open up with a karakia. Kia tau ngā manaakitanga o te mea ngaro, ki runga ki tēnā o tātou. Kia mahia he hua mā kihikihi. Kia toi te kupu, toi te mana, toi te aroha, toi te reo Māori. Kia tuturu, ka whakamaua, kia tina, hui e, tai ki e. So kia ora tātou. And just a little bit of whakawhanaunatanga so that you get to know who's here at this wāhanga. Ko Yasmine tōku ingoa, and I am an ECE kaiako. I am also the student and beginning organiser based in Tāmaki Makaurau for NZI Aotearoa. My tūranga waiwai is Parihitini and Horano, so I'm Palestinian Jordanian. Kirikiriroa is my kāinga in Aotearoa, and I've recently moved to Tāmaki Makaurau. So a whole lot of different places that I have connections with, and I'm very privileged to have those sorts of connections. So I'm going to pass the rākau to Paraone to introduce yourself to our group.
Tēnā koe te katoa, tuatahi ake kai te mihi ki te kuputapu, ko tuku hei whakarite mō runga I tēnei huihuinga, I runga I te ipurangi, nō reira tēnā koe. O tira e nā kanohi o te motu ko hono mai ki tēnei hui rangi, hui topa, e mihi atu ana kia koe te katoa, tēnā rawatu koe te katoa, a me ngā mihi ki o tātou huhua mate, a rātou kia rātou, tātou kia tātou, kia ora hui tātou katoa. Ko Paraone Gloyne tōku ingoa, nō rauka waki whare pūhunga, Ngāti Mania Poto, anō hoki, tainui waka. Kei konei ahau kei te awa mutu e noho ana. My name's Paraone, from Raukawa, Mania Poto. I have some Pākehā ancestry through my father, and I work at Te Wānanga Aotearoa as Pōtikanga, and I'm passionate about te reo, ngā tikanga, te ao Māori, and Matariki.
Kia ora, Paraone. And let's pass on to Rangimokai.
Kia ora, tēnā tātou katoa, ko Rangimokai Knuckey tōku ingoa, he uri tēnei no ngā iwi katoa o Taranaki maunga, kei waitara ahau e noho ana, kei waitara ahau I tēnei wā, e tuku mihi ana ki ia o koutou, e tuku mihi ana ki a koe Paraone, ki a koe Yasmine, nei te mihi nunui. I am the amo taurima, a pauako at Te Pihipenga Kākano mai I rangia te kura kaupapa Māori, he kura kaupapa te aho matua ki Taranaki, ki Spotswood, New Plymouth. I have been part of NZI for a very long time, and so it's my honour and my pleasure to be here and to tautoko all of the kōrero that are coming out today. Nō reira, e mihi ana, e mihi ana.
I think honestly today I'm probably the most excited person because I'm going to be surrounded with you two, and you've both got a huge wealth of knowledge that you'll be able to share with the rest of us. So just a bit of tikanga about this wāhanga. It's going to be recorded so that you guys can access it after this live viewing. And so it's going to be an ongoing resource for you guys to be able to refer to within your classrooms and ECE centres or in your other work spaces. Please feel free to share in the chat box below where you're from as well. Let's try and find those connections where all the Waikato people are at and everyone else. And we will be taking some questions in while we're, so yeah, we'll leave some time at the end of this wāhanga to make sure that we answer as much of those as we can. So I'm going to hand over my invisible rākau to Paraone. So you can start us off to talk about our kaupapa, which is Matariki across New Zealand. Now, it's becoming more and more normalized, I would say. A lot of ECE centres and primary schools and workplaces are wanting to be involved in Matariki celebrations. And there is a lot of conversation going on at the moment between how to authentically celebrate the Māori New Year and the line of cultural appropriation, etc. So what are your thoughts on that, Paraone? And yeah, let us into this dialogue. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe, how do I pronounce your name properly?
Yasmine.
Yasmine. Tēnā koe, Yasmine. Yeah, those are some great pātai to start our discussion. I'm thinking back 20 years ago when I first started learning about Matariki, and there was really nothing out there at the time. And there were whispers within my own hapu and whānau. And, you know, what was written was mostly, well, everything then, everybody referred to what Alston Best had put in his book. And that was about it. There wasn't much kōrero out there about Matariki. Probably within those 10 years, there were Matariki celebrations happening, which was great. But I felt then that they were lacking a Māori worldview and how things were being celebrated. And so it should have been then, because nobody knew what to do. Fast forward 20 years later, with the research that Dr. Rangimokai Knuckey, a good friend of mine, also a lot of kōrero that Reriata Mākiha has put out, Matariki is blooming. And we've got, it's going to be a national holiday next year. While that's really good, we need to be careful and mindful in our intentions about how we celebrate Matariki, and bringing that authenticity, I guess, to how we celebrate Matariki from a Māori perspective, and looking at it at ways how we can do that safely for people that may not be at a level of te reo or tikanga Māori or their knowledge of te ao Māori, that it's still accessible to the wider public. And that's been something that both Rangi and I have been advocating for.
Yeah, I find that a good question to ask in these circumstances is, who am I celebrating this? Who am I celebrating Matariki for when you're holding a celebration within your setting? Who's your target audience, pretty much? Is it the teachers? Is it particular families? Is it for the collective? So it is all about that intention, eh, Paraone?
Well, if you look at one of the whakatauki, Matariki Hunga Nui, the great gathering of Matariki, there in the whakatauki lies the answer to your question. And that Matariki is for everybody. It's a time to come together, to be reflective on what was, and to think about what's coming. And also to, while there's an acknowledgement of life, there's a connection of Matariki to those that have passed, to our dead. So that's in the reflective piece of Matariki, and our celebration, commemoration of commemoration of those that have passed on while we celebrate Matariki. So there's different parts to how we go about celebrating Matariki, and traditions that our tupuna used.
Have shared upon us, yes. So there's quite some interest in how Matariki is celebrated across Aotearoa and how that might differ from region to region. Are there any examples that you might be able to explain or touch base on, Paraone?
In all honesty, hand on heart, the Matariki tradition that we now celebrate, and our hapu has been doing so for, this will be our 5th year, where our hapu, our marae, are going to come together to recognise, to acknowledge Matariki. So we've been doing this for a few years now, and we've got a set tikanga that we go by. And to be honest, what we have now in our celebration of Matariki are things that have been left to us. And we've created in our hapu, alongside Dr. Rangi Mātāmua, a way to celebrate that as a Māori way of celebrating Matariki. So, for instance, over the years, to rewind to my kōrero before, people didn't know how to celebrate Matariki, so they go out in the morning, not necessarily at the right time.
Yeah.
Some, you know, for instance, I know I went to a couple 2 years ago, I got asked to speak at a Matariki celebration. Matariki wasn't even in the sky yet. So people to know that the right time, when is the right time to celebrate Matariki. Probably a difference would be some iwi say that it should be Tangaroa in the Tangaroa moon phases at the period of Matariki, and we're of that mind. There's some kōrero out there that it should be whiro. Looking at the moon phase of whiro and what whiro means, darkness, death and destruction and all that sort of thing, that's not really a time where we should be celebrating. So there's some differing kōrero there. What we have now today is an amalgamation of traditions that we've brought together into one.
Rangimokai, I'm going to ask you if you can shed some light on any practices for celebrating Matariki within your hapu or iwi.
Kia ora. So here in Taranaki, we do celebrate Matariki. I know that there's a bit of kōrero out there that we do not celebrate Matariki and that we focus only on puanga, but that's definitely not my understanding here at home. At home, we do focus on puanga, and the reason for that is when Matariki rises in the eastern horizon, we on the west coast, we are from Parihaka around to Waitara ways. When we're looking over at the eastern horizon, our maunga is the first thing we see. And so when Matariki is on that rise, it's actually hidden behind our maunga. So the first whetū that we see in the sky is puanga. And to us in Ngāti Ruanui, puanga ko ia te mātāmua, she's the eldest of all those whetū. So when puanga rises, that's when we know it is our time of Matariki, our time of Māori New Year. So this is the reason why I think that kōrero has come about, that Taranaki celebrates puanga, but actually we celebrate Matariki like the rest of our whānau in Aotearoa. We just have puanga as one of our biggest focuses because of where she sits in the sky, and that for the first 2 weeks of Matariki coming up on the horizon, we actually don't get to see Matariki until they've come up over top of Maunga Taranaki. So that's probably one of the biggest things that I wanted to talk about today was the positioning of those whetū in Nui, and why puanga is why you hear about puanga in Taranaki much as Matariki.
And that's a good point you raise, and that's something that, you know, it's not a competition between Matariki and puanga, and if you acknowledge Matariki, it doesn't mean that you can't acknowledge puanga, and vice versa. If you acknowledge puanga, it doesn't mean that Matariki doesn't factor into your whakaaro. For me, the part of the bigger picture, I think, is getting people interested in Māori star lore and our traditions around the whetū.
Yeah.
Both puanga and Matariki, I've seen, have been a gateway of interest for a lot of people. That's what's provided the opportunity for them to engage with star traditions of Te Ao Māori. So it's not a competition between puanga and Matariki. And I know some of my cousins on the west there, their whakaaro is puanga is the whetū that sweeps out the old and Matariki is there for the new. So they work together. And all of our stars have a connection to it.
So is Puanga visible across Aotearoa?
Yes. Yeah. But, Puanga does rise.
Yeah.
Rises before Matariki. Matariki just set couple of weeks ago.
Oh, yes.
Was the setting of Matariki on the western horizon. And will rise in a couple of weeks around the 2nd, 3rd. Before then, but it can't be seen by the naked eye. Hence why the kōrero is to wait for the Tangaroa moon phases. And with the celebration of Matariki, or the observance, whatever you want to call it, there's 3 parts. There's the viewing of Matariki. So looking at each of the stars, how they look in the early morning sky, gives a message about the coming year in terms of food growth, things like that. And then the remembrance of the dead, te whakamahara i ngā mate, is the other part of Matariki, acknowledging those that have passed on, with the kōrero with Matariki being at the tauihu o te waka o Rangi, or wherever you are in Aotearoa. It could be te waka o Paraurangi or te waka o Tainui, as it is here where I am. And it rising again, and all the dead have set with Matariki when Matariki is set, and then when te waka comes back up into the sky again, Taramainuku and his net are there to sweep up all of those that will pass in that year. And then the last part of the ceremony is the feeding of the stars. So this is the acknowledgement for the stars that have a connection to both the environment and our kai, our food sources.
So let's talk about translating these 3 main kaupapa that you've shared into what that celebration would look like in a kura, for example. Rangimokai, do you have any examples that you could share with us about how you would, for example, as Paraone mentioned, the acknowledgement of those who have passed on? Would that be something that would be done with the tamariki or any of the...
In our kura kaupapa, Puanga Matariki is definitely a time that we're counting down to in our calendar, in our maramataka. So all those that have passed on within the year, our tamariki are now at the point where they are creating karanga, they're creating pao.
Wow.
These are tributes to all of those who have passed on.
Yep.
And most of them are uri of those tupuna, of those people. They're our whānau, we know them really well. So these pao and these karanga are filled with kōrero from their heart that are to each and every one of them that are about to get on that waka, and they're on their trip. So it's a really special time that our rangatahi are using kupu from Taranaki kupu of the tupuna kupu no te ngākau, and creating these tributes to all of those that have passed. And so our tamariki are not only a part of that, they're leading that in our kura. That is their haipapa, that is something that they know is coming up, and you can hear the creation happening well before pipiri, well before
June,
the holiday. It's something that's truly ingrained in each of those tauira, in each of those tamariki rangatahi.
Oh, that's so powerful. That is really powerful. Oh my gosh, I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah, they do such an amazing job, and it's really, really, it's really emotional at the time. Tuku, sometimes the rangatahi get up and it doesn't quite come out, but ka rongo I te wairua, tu anō, ka tu anō I te tū, and you feel that motivation, definitely.
Oh, kia ora Rangimokai. Paraone, do you have any other examples that you'd be able to give us?
Well, if I were to list taking time to remember those loved ones, those that are no longer with us, give thanks for the year that has passed, cook a meal and offer it to Matariki. So we have a pumped out version of what we do, but you don't need 5 tohunga standing around the umu, the hangi, 5 o'clock in the morning. We can make it appropriate to what we have and the resources we have at the time. So, we've put out there, if that means that you're outside in the morning with a pot, feeding the stars, acknowledging the stars after you've had your remembrance time with those that have passed on, and then feeding the stars, and then coming in and having a kai, then that's good.
Oh, that's such a great example as well, that could be applied in our schools.
There's hiwa I te rangi. So these are one of the stars that have been, that came out of the rangahau and the kōrero that Rangi Mātāmua put out there, and found. This has inspired iwi to go and find kōrero pertaining to Matariki. So this is the other thing that's been inspirational, I think, in reviving these traditions. So, I remember, I think one kura, they sort of got it right. They didn't know about hiwa I te rangi then, but they were writing their wishes on bits of paper and then burning them in the fire. So they were too far off the mark in setting down their tūmanako or their dreams and aspirations for the year to come.
We did that as well with our whānau, where they wrote a wish and then their child wrote a wish on the same piece of paper and then threw them into the ahi. And because I worked at a preschool, we had a picture of each of the stars and the name of the star, and then how that would translate into terms that the children would understand. So, for example, Tupuarangi, we had a picture of the children in Ngahere, in the forest and exploring. Tupuanuku, children that were digging in the garden. So photos of them that they could actually see and relate themselves to that star. And we found that was quite a powerful tool for 3- and 4-year-olds to connect with Matariki as a concept.
Well, I can think of a lot of adults that would connect to that too.
It is very powerful. So how do you think we can prepare in the lead up to Matariki, particularly from a Wairua perspective? So,
set the intention is important. Set the intention, set the space. For us, we come in the night before, and we all stay together at the marae the night before. So we're all there to get up early. It's the preparation that goes into getting the kai ready as well, for the umu in the morning, and also the kai, because after we've had the umu, we have a hakari.
Yeah.
So that night is really important, and that's a night of whakawhanaungatanga, of coming together, connecting, reconnecting, and we have a wānanga the night before, which is also very important, and it's been really strong in perpetuating the kōrero around Matariki. When Tuhine was talking about the tamariki and their pāo and things like that, this has become a normal thing for our tamariki and our hapu. Now I get them asking me about now, and they have been, uncle, when is te hautapu? When is Matariki? When are we going to the pā? And who's doing this and who's doing that? So it's become normalised, but the preparation, getting the wairua prepared, and te taha tinana is coming in the day before, the night before is important.
Are there any special pūrākau or stories or whakatauki that can be used in Matariki that you'd be able to share with us?
We've got Matariki Hunganui, which I've shared. We've got Matariki Ahunganui. So Ahunganui, Ahu is a mound or a heap. So Matariki Ahunganui, so bringing the mounds or heaps together. That's another whakatauki. talking about the weather, Matariki tā puapua. So we're in Matariki tā puapua now. Matariki ho puapua is talking about the pools of water from the rain. And there's also, could be used as a metaphor for the pools of people that come together.
Rangimokai, do you have any that you'd be able to share with us?
Our kōrero in Taranaki talks about puanga kairo, so plentiful or bountiful food. When we were doing wānanga around puanga kairo, we talked about not only the food, the kai from the land, but the kairo talks about the kai a te hinengaro, the knowledge. So making sure that we are not only celebrating or welcoming in new kai that's coming up for the new year, but also opening ourselves up to this new knowledge and this new way of being. So puanga kairo is one of the biggest focuses for Taranaki at this time.
So it's not just about the puku, the hinengaro is also quite important.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we've had a lot of questions about how you can find puanga. Is there anything that you could share about share the tikanga around that kōrero, or who people might be able to go to if they wanted to find out more information on that, Rangimokai?
So puanga, the easiest way to find puanga is if you look for Orion's belt, tautoru, Orion's belt, or the pot, people call it. You go to the middle star and you go straight above it, and the bright shining star right above tautoru is puanga. So when we go out and celebrate, or when we come together and acknowledge puanga in the morning at our kura, we first find tautoru. Our babies, our young ones, use the little pau that we have so that we remember kei rungara, ko puanga, kei rarora, ko putara. So we're using waiata to teach our tamariki that this is where you find it. And it will be through that waiata that tamariki will find Orion's belt, will find tautoru, look straight up, and then puanga should be shining right above that.
Could you share with us the name of that waiata so that we'll include it, or you can share with it later? We'll pop it in to our box. Thank you. That would be really wonderful. So do you think people should get in touch? What advice do you have about people getting in touch with their local iwi or marae if they've got any questions?
Is that pātai to me?
Kia korua.
For me, I think to be really authentic with your journey with Matariki is through living it. So I know that aunties and uncles here are very hoha with people who come in and go, I need some information.
Yep.
And so I know that with our whānau, they're more willing to give to those who are a part of mahi. You come and be a part of our iwi and the journey that we're on, and you pick it up as you go. But if you are in there and you're trying to research something on Google and you think, I'm going to use auntie or uncle as Google, then that's not really going to work. To be authentic is to come in and learn about that and go through that journey yourself as a kaiako, go through that journey yourself as someone who's giving that onto our tamariki, that's working with those who know what they're doing and those who do that mahi. Yeah.
Me koe Paraone, do you have anything else that you'd like to add on?
I'm just in support of that kōrero, and that that hopefully it inspires pauako to have a connection with further kōrero in te ao Māori about te whānau mārama in general. And I know lots have started with Matariki and then have extended on with Matariki or Puanga, and that's been an extension, or they've extended into te maramataka Māori, so getting an understanding about the various lunar calendars. And, you know, maramataka Māori, or not just lunar calendar, but a maramataka is an environmental calendar. And it's been a gateway for them to get involved in there and learn about that. So that's important. It could be a way to just to go on the kōrero, te tuahine rā, if you're going to connect or reach out to somebody, maintain that connection, be real about it. It's not a one-off thing like, oh, geez, got Matariki in 2 weeks, who can kōrero? Yeah.
It's not like a Google search. It's a real human connection.
Yeah, and saying that, you know, it's a balance. You know, I know a lot of Māori and iwi that don't have anybody to turn to because they haven't got the kōrero.
Yeah.
They haven't got any kōrero. So it does turn into Google. Be careful what you're Googling. You know, I would recommend reading the book of Rangi Mātāmua, his book, Matariki. Te Wānanga Aotearoa, we've, in collaboration with him, we've created resources that are on our website, which we've made safe for everybody to use. And there's enough mōhiotanga mātauranga there to get people started.
To get that conversation going.
Yeah.
So what is your big advice for people around Matariki who have very little today or very little confidence in mātauranga Māori?
Well, the first thing could be, as a stepping stone, is actually getting up in the morning and go and finding Matariki, and perhaps learning some whakatauki about Matariki. That could be the first step. I know that's a mission for some people, getting up at that hour. So even that, getting out there in the environment, because all stars have a connection to our taiao. And that is the bigger picture. So getting out there in the morning, that could be a first step, and actually finding Matariki, finding Puanga, finding Matariki are great first steps. Looking at the kōrero, like Puanga, kairau, whakatauki to do with Matariki, that's a great start. And then maybe build on that for years to come.
Rangimokai, did you have anything to add on to that?
I think that Paraone's pretty much covered it. I know that having that connection with your iwi is going to make a definite change. I see more and more of our kurauraki have that kōrero with their whānau who belongs to the iwi that we're in. And it starts there, and those whānau, they make a connection with each of those whānau, and those whānau are there giving them connections, setting them up with the networks that they need. They are the whānau that have worked in our iwi and our rohe for generations, and so they've been acknowledged for the things that they're bringing to their kura environment. And if they've put kura auraki, then they are there contributing to that for our tamariki Māori who are in kura auraki at the moment. And I think that connecting with that iwi and going back to the iwi and the kōrero of the iwi, of the rohe that you are in, is really important.
So are there any education contacts or resources available for educators to find out which iwi to contact?
For us here in Taranaki, we have resource teachers of Māori, and it is definitely their role within the education sector to sort of come in and support you and let you have that sort of connection with those that they might know, with resources that they know are out there. And Taranaki do have some, but as I said earlier on, they're a little bit hidden and you can't really Google our resources. So having those connections is really important, and
definitely
using like resources of teachers of Māori, and going around and knowing your people in your rohe is really important.
I find that working with the whānau that you have at your centre or your school is one of the most powerful ways to decide how about you're going to go and do your Matariki celebration. And what you'd find mostly is that the Māori children in your classroom are going to be representing Māori from lots of different iwis from all over the country. They're not all from one particular place. So they're all going to have different ideas on how Matariki should be celebrated. And having that kōrero open, or that wānanga between families, was just so powerful. So Paraone, did you have anything else to add about on that?
This period, i ngā wā mua, this was the time to wānanga. I mean, it's cold, it's wet, it's winter. You're not out in the gardens because nothing's growing at this time. We didn't grow your Brussels sprouts and all those sorts of things. So this was a time to wānanga. So it's an opportunity for kura. Wānanga as pauako together with the community of the kura, the board, and the iwi. Make those connections.
Definitely. I would say I personally really liked how you mentioned the intention as your primary step towards celebrating Matariki authentically. I always remind myself of a teacher that I had a kōrero with who was very well intentioned, but her approach towards any celebration was to put clothes of that particular culture up on the wall. And it always got me questioning. When you go into someone's house, will you find clothes on their wall? It's not really an authentic representation of what a cultural celebration looks like from that person's point of view. So any other ideas or any other advice on how to avoid appropriation and work towards relevance and authenticity?
Rangimokai?
I definitely think that networks is the biggest thing that I can think of. You're not going to know until you find someone who knows. Otherwise, you are making this up on the spot, aren't you? So you kind of really need to reach out, and networks are really important to me. And that kanohi ki te kanohi. I think that us as kaiako need to learn. It is our hapori that's going to be growing, our tamariki. So you need to know who's next to you, who's around you. And for us at Kura, we know every single one of our whānau, whether it's because they're our own whānau or because we know who they are as people and what they contribute to our kura and to our tamariki. We know that we're a full circle around the tamariki who are right in the middle. So you need to know who's on the other side of that circle, because tamariki sometimes are like hippie, they're like sheep. One side of the circle lets go of hands, the sheep all run out that way. So we know that we're working together with whānau, we're working together with hapori to create that porofita around our tamariki. So we're all keeping them in and keeping them safe until they become a part of the circle when the new hipia have arrived next spring, and the circle of life goes on. So
Beautiful.
So what are your hopes for Mātauranga Māori in education in terms of this upcoming momentum that educators and non-educators have got towards celebrating Matariki?
Big pātai. Well, firstly, for me, for it to be valued, Mātauranga Māori, like there's so many kurahuna yet to be discovered. For instance, the resurgence of star law, where the Puanga Matariki. 20 years ago, there was hardly any kōrero, and there's still lots to discover i roto i te Mātauranga Māori. I mean, huge. That kōrero Mātauranga Māori is not just our knowledge base, it's how we operate, it's our values. Te reo Māori is Mātauranga Māori, tikanga Māori is Mātauranga Māori. So it's a huge, huge area. And we've got this, you know what you know what you don't know, and then there's a huge, huge area, you don't know what you don't know. And there's lots of kura, lots of taonga in that part of any knowledge, but talking about Mātauranga Māori, there's lots to explore and unpack. But yeah, for me is for that Mātauranga to be valued. And we've seen with Matariki I guess from a science perspective and our stars, the bearing that the maramataka or the environmental calendar that has on our world, physically, mentally, and spiritually.
Oh, kia ora, Paraone. Rangimokai, do you have any last, what are your hopes?
For me, I think for mātauranga Māori, it really needs to be normalised. That needs to be the way that we educate our tamariki. You don't go to China and expect American tikanga there. You don't go to France and expect England and crumpets and tea. So we're coming to Aotearoa and we've got this English system telling our Māori tamariki that they're failing.
Yep.
It just doesn't make sense to me. And at the end of the day, I know that we just need to go back to mātauranga Māori, mātauranga Māui, and have that cornerstone in our education system, and that be the way that our tamariki are learning every day.
We're coming close to our closing time, so I wanted to ask if you guys have any closing thoughts and comments, and perhaps maybe what's your wero for NZRI members?
The challenge, ko te wero, is take up the kōrero that we've given and be connected. He wā whakawhanaungatanga te wā o Puanga o Matariki, embody what you're going to be doing during Puanga and Matariki. Embody those things. Live it. That's my wero.
Kia ora, Paraone. Rangimokai, do you have any challenges for us?
My wero is that from this Matariki until the next Matariki, you pick up just one more thing that is appropriate for your iwi, that is appropriate for your tamariki Māori, and then the next one we pick up 2 and we pick up 3. And then you know that by the time our mokopuna come around, we are just so rich with our kaupapa, with our tikanga Māori for all of our tamariki. Whether you are Māori, whether you have come from another country, whether you are Pākehā within Aotearoa, we have all this knowledge for all of our tamariki when it comes to the time. So one more thing.
Oh, that's so beautiful and achievable and no excuses. So I hope to be hearing lots of positive reflections from everyone within the next year. I'm going to close us off with a karakia and share a few things just towards the end. So, me nui tātou, kia whakairia te tapu, kia wātia ai te ara, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataha ai, haumie, huie, taekie. Tēnā tātou katoa. I want to thank you both for your beautiful kōrero, and personally for me, the most thing that I got goosebumps when you were telling me about acknowledging those that have passed, and it's from a Western perspective and possibly from an Arab perspective, the two perspectives that I most look at the world through. Death is a taboo topic, you know, it's not discussed with children, it's sort of ignored or, you know, brushed under the carpet. So it's really refreshing to see a mokotao, like a complete Māori worldview lens on it. And because the reality is we all came from someone, and those people are the reason where we are in our lives. And to be able to acknowledge that for tamariki is just so powerful, and for whānau. And Rangimokai, when you talked about the karanga as well, and being able to use the kupu of their families, it's next level powerful stuff. So I really want to thank you both for your kōrero. I want to also give a big shout out to the NZRI Aotearoa members that have made this wāhanga possible. We're going to put the link below if you guys would like to join us, become members, and let us know about any other PDs that you'd like to have these sorts of wānanga about, because it's how we get to learn things. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Tēnā koe, tēnā tātou.